Thanks, Jireh, for being here today. Here we have a number of our bootcamp students from mostly our batch 3 and batch 4, and we have some upcoming students as well. They are currently anywhere between how long, guys? One month and 5 months into our 6-month course. And so we have Porter. We also have Porter here, who's kindly volunteered to be your guinea pig for today to be interviewed. So thanks, Jireh, for being here. Maybe I can briefly introduce Jireh to everyone else. So Jireh is currently a data science instructor at General Assembly. He used to be he's very accomplished. He used to run his own data science consultancy, or still runs his own data science consultancy. He used to be a data scientist at Gojek, at companies like Lock Health, at Facebook. He was a software engineer at Facebook as well. He did not study computer science. He studied statistics. He did a master's in statistics at Stanford and studied economics for his undergrad. And we know each other through the Stanford community. Jireh has offered to see what we can do in supporting Rocket Academy for interview prep. And I hope that this session is helpful for everyone as well. Jireh?
Thank you. Hi, thank you. Before I introduce myself, I prepared a couple of slides. I thought that I would maybe kind of have a little bit of a weird structure today. So maybe I would do a mock interview first, followed by my slides. Then we finish up with a mock interview, and then I open up the floor for questions. Okay. Before we do this little mock interview, I would ask Porter to share a screen, okay, maybe with a code editor open, because in general that's required. So whenever you're ready, okay, and while you're booting up your code editor and whatever, I can maybe tell you a little bit more about, as a junior developer, I think in general, you'll be asked, a couple of, once you get your face through the door, right? Like you will probably have 3 to 4 rounds of face-to-face, or face-to-face it means different under different phases, right? Like phase 2 heightened alert face-to-face is different from like phase 3 heightened alert face-to-face. But 3 to 4 face-to-face interviews with a software engineer in a slightly more senior position who's going to ask you about 45 minutes worth of software engineering questions. And at this level, it's very rare that you will get questions that ask you very open-ended questions like, oh, how would you design a system? At this level, it's mostly basically quite, contained 45-minute long software writing skills that you'll be assessed for whether you can actually write code, whether you write code neatly, whether you have good taste in code, whether you can be trusted to not write bad code. These are some things that you will be assessed for, okay? So great, thank you, Porter. Let's begin. So welcome to XYZ Corp. I'll ask that we talk about XYZ Corp towards the end of this interview session. But as a warm-up question, I would like for you to write a function,
okay,
that takes in 2 lists.
Okay.
And you may assume that each of these lists is sorted respectively, okay? And without loss of generality, you may assume that the lists are sorted in ascending order.
Okay. All right. Okay. A function now, that takes into this, and assumption is the ascending order. Okay.
Yes, and now the function should basically produce one list that is a combination of these 2 lists, but also in ascending order.
Okay. So the result is one list. Okay.
In ascending order, yes. There could be ties. There could be, ties, and it's fine.
Okay. I was so ready to do this like in lead code where I could like press a button and find out. So this came as a surprise. So for example, if I have a list, you're saying that if my first list is 1, 2, 3, and the other one is 1, 4, 5, I'm expecting to get 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah.
Correct.
Hmm.
Cool.
You can feel the tension in the room.
Yeah, no, in my head right now, because I was so ready to do it in lead code, I was like Python. And then now I'm looking at it, I'm like, I'm more familiar with JavaScript to do this now.
You can choose any language.
Oh, yeah?
I'm happy for you to use JavaScript as well.
Oh, cool, cool. Thank you. Let's use maybe CodePen would be good.
Our students are always switching between JavaScript and Python because they're building the apps primarily in JavaScript.
I'm gonna delete this. All right, let's try it here.
Great. Could I ask that you
Make it bigger.
Control plus? Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
I'm getting up there, so
Definitely.
I can't really see the.
No worries. I'm also like struggling on my end also when I saw the. All right, cool. So I'm gonna assume first thing I'm gonna do is I want to test it out. So I'm just going to make 2 of the list first. List A and list B. I'm just going to follow with my example. Then I go in and make a function to, maybe let's call it combine list. And then what I want to do, so it's only going to take in 2 lists, right? For now, let's just assume that it takes in 2 lists. So my algorithm would be to combine both lists and then sort it. This would be the naive solution. I think the constants combine. And then I'm going to use the sort operator to help me to combine this too. It's this spread operator. And then I'm going to sort it in ascending order. Which at the top of my head now, I have no idea how to do it. There we go. There we go. I really want that sort. Okay. Then I'll take my combine plus sort. And then you return the sorted array. So it's just a return combine. I think this would work out fine.
Okay, great. Does the default sort of function in JavaScript, does it know how to sort, like as which order?
In which order?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think based on this, oh, let's do a test. I think the easiest one is to do a test. Hmm. Yep. Hopefully right. Hmm. Hmm. Interesting. I know how to do this. But... Ah, there we go. What we could do is let's just borrow this. Function A, B. Numbers is our so if we were to borrow it, if we were to tweak the code around, it would be like this. Then let's give it a whirl. There we go.
Okay, great. I think that's reasonable as a first pass. Can you, if we were to let the length of list A be, let's say M, and the length of list B be M, okay, what do you think the sort of overall runtime of this algorithm is going to be?
The overall runtime of this algorithm would be the array. I would have to check because I'm not too sure what the spread operator's block time is.
Okay, if you have to guess.
I would have to guess it would probably be if it's going through. Hold on. I guess the one thing I really want to find out is if it just plonks it at the back, because if it just plonks it at the back, it has to go through. I'm gonna guess O of n for now before I do my test. O of n. For this one. And then the sort function has to go through every single, has to look through every single one. Where's the O of n? Return. So yeah. I think it's a O
Okay, so
n plus n, so it's O of n.
In particular, can you look at the sort function there? Okay, what is the complexity of that sort function?
The complexity of the sort function. The sort function will look through the entire array and compare each one with the previous value. So that's O of n.
Okay.
Yeah, I think so, because it will look through each one. And
okay.
Checking this side.
So currently you're just appending every single element of list 2 at the end of list 1.
Yep.
And then you are sorting the entire list.
That's right.
So my question is there a way that you can preserve the structure of the underlying, or maybe exploit that structure a little bit more?
Right? This original one, is it?
Yes.
let me have a think. Could I could look through the first one and check if, okay, what I'm thinking now, I'm not too sure if it will work. But if I look through list A and I do a check if anything in list B matches list A, then I can add both of them into an array. Sorts. And we're looking at another array.
Okay, maybe let's look at this toy example. Let's look at list A, and list B. Okay, so let's say we want to exploit the underlying sortedness of these two arrays respectively to create a new list. Then what would you do? Can you explain to me again what you mean by?
So just check. So I want to check through list A, which is 1, 2, and 3. And I just want to like compare each and every one of the values with each of them. If one is 1, then it would add we'll have another separate array. It would add then it would add both of them into that separate array. It will take it out. Then you check it. It's 4. Is it equals to 2? Then no, it won't. I think there's got to be another condition that says that if it's more or less than as well.
Well, I mean, let's not worry about that because let's assume that the lists are sorted in ascending order, okay?
Oh yeah. So if this is if it's more or less, so right now we are looking for if it will basically put the one that is lesser inside. So maybe there's a condition that checks if it's equals to or less than. So 4 will compare with 2 right now. And because it's 2 is less than 4, then it would pop 2 in the array. And we'll remove it from, not remove, but it will just not read it again. And then 4 will compare with 3. It's more as well. So we will put it in here. And at the end, maybe you just put in what is left in list B into this new array.
Yes.
That's what
okay.
I'm thinking. Yeah.
I think that should work. Maybe you can try your hand at this idea.
Ooh, okay. Where were we again? All right, let's try this. So thanks, length. All right. I was gonna make another. Just gonna comment this one out. Yeah, let's try this. So the algorithm is that we're going to look through this one. And the next thing we're gonna do is check. Do a check. We're gonna check if our list if the index of list A are they going to be equal length, or would they might not be equal length, right? Is what we're assuming.
They are definitely not equal length. Oh, I mean, that
be
they're
like
not likely to be equal length.
If I look through list A, I wouldn't get through all of it. Let me try to code this out first because it's a little bit hard to look at it.
Okay, can you recap to me what the first step that you wanted to do was? I believe that the first thing that you wanted to do was to create a new list, right?
Oh yeah. Right, so I wanted to create a new list. New list equals to. I wanted to create a new array, and then I wanted to loop through list one. So I'm thinking if I loop through list one, it's only going to get 3. I have to check every single number against list one as well.
Do you have to check every single number though? But remember, both lists are sorted. So actually, when you were doing it just now using the examples, you actually didn't check every single number.
Oh yeah, I just need to check the first one would be sorted. Yeah, that I wouldn't have to worry about the ones at the back because they will be bigger.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Oh. All right, let's try. So I will look through the list and I'll just check it, do a check if list 2 at the index is equals to list 1 index. That's my first check. And my second check would be if it's less then I want to edit to new array. New array. And at the end, I want to combine. One.
Okay, so maybe instead, I think maybe now you might be confusing yourself a little because I'm not sure if you and I are sharing the same mental model. For example, why are you always only comparing I against I? Shouldn't you have maybe a separate index or pointer into each list? So maybe you should have an I and a J.
I'm trying to discover if I need a J, it means that I would need a loop in sort of like another loop.
Well, I mean, could you not advance the J and the I independently?
Advance the J and the I independently. I think I'm a little bit confused on my algorithm for now. Let's see.
Okay, so I think maybe I can help you out a little bit more, and perhaps the idea here is that you should only consume from the head of the list, right? So let's say in this case, okay, after you take 1 and 1, right? After you take 1 and 1, then you're left with with the rest, okay, of list A and the rest of list B, correct? Then what is the next element that you should take?
The next element I should take would be 2.
2, okay?
Yeah. So,
So then you
I'm
can
not-
just consume 2 and then throw that way, okay? So if we look at I, then maybe I and J, then it's I will be 0, J will be 0. Then after that, you advance I becomes 1.
Hmm.
Then after that, you advance I again, then I becomes 3.
Yep.
And then you can't advance I anymore. Then you just add all.
Yeah, then add all of them.
Yeah.
That would.
So yeah, so I think, and maybe you can play around with the idea where you can advance I and J independently of each other in order to consume from the rest of the list.
Or in order to just get the rest. So right now I would get. Let me just. Yeah, I'm a little bit stuck at how I'm going to use J in the first thing, because my initial idea is to go through this. If it equals, I'm just going to. My initial idea was to mutate the list.
Okay.
So it was going to mutate list A and B. So if it was equals, it would just remove them completely, put it into a new array of 3, and then it will do a check.
Yeah, okay.
So I wouldn't need, yeah, in my algorithm, I need a J, because I'm only taking the length of the first one.
Yep. But I think that's because in the example, for example, that you created, so let's say perhaps you insert, if you insert, let's say a 3.5, okay, into list B.
To list B, okay, and it would be here. Yeah.
Then now you can't just consume all the way to the end of list A before you consume from list B, right? Now you have to sort of.
You mean 2.5, right?
Oh, is it?
Yes, 2.5, excuse me.
I will consume all the way until list A ends with one loop.
So now, if there were 2.5 here,
Yep.
then how would you be consuming, I suppose?
To try it. Because I'm only looping the length of this. So it's only going to happen 3 times. So it's going to check. The first time it's going to check this. And that's 1, it's going to put both of them into my list. And then the second time it runs through, it's going to do a check. And because this is greater than this, it's going to put this into my list. And third time around, it's going to check this against this. And because this is lesser than this, then it's going to put this into my list.
Right.
And at the end of the day, I have 2 more arrays, right?
Yeah. So I think that's why you also need a J, or rather you need at least another pointer into the other list. Does that make sense?
If he's popping, he doesn't need a pointer, right? Because he can get the 0th element.
Yes.
I'm just thinking if I popping.
What's the runtime of popping order? From the front.
Popping is O from the front. It's still O of n because it still has to rearrange the entire array after you pop it.
Can we do it without popping? Using the indexes that Jireh is suggesting?
So I realized that I might end up with 2 arrays at the end of the day. So thinking like how am I supposed to solve that? Which is why right, we need to
Okay, so let's pause here because I still have I would like to do a little short presentation. But thank you for your effort. I think this has been a very instructive session because I do feel that, I'm going to interrupt your share, okay?
Yeah, sure.
I do feel that interviewing is a skill that can be learned, okay? And I think perhaps let's go through this and then let's debrief on maybe on I'll open up for questions on debrief, and especially from you, Porter, on kind of what the general approach is and maybe how we can improve. Okay, so maybe I'll keep you in suspense for a little bit more. Okay, so these are just what we're going to go through today. Okay, we've done the mock interview. And I think you already know enough about me, but one thing that people don't know about me is that I actually have conducted basically hundreds of interviews at this point, and I kind of have an idea for what makes a successful, not just interviewee, but what makes a successful interviewer. So the myth number one is that you must get the correct answer to perform well. Okay. So this is definitely a myth because you don't, in general, problems frequently have a few reasonable solutions, okay? So interviewers are not interested in why your answer is correct, but why you think your answer is correct. They care more about your thinking skills and your ability to communicate them than about whether you got the right answer or not. So if your answer is correct, but you fail to demonstrate clearly to the interviewer why it is reasonable, okay, you may still not be considered to perform well in the interview. So that's myth number one. Myth number two is that interviewers want you to fail. This is definitely not true, okay? Experienced interviewers just want to tell whether you'd be a good fit for their company, okay? So they want to help you succeed at the interview. So you must learn how to enlist your interviewer to help you succeed. Only inexperienced interviewers want you to fail, okay? Myth number three is that you're being interviewed. I think it's a two-way street. So you get a good sense for what kind of people work at the company based on your interviews with the people at the company as well, okay? As I said, you get about 3 to 4 shots at talking to people who currently work at the company. So you have 3 to 4 shots to get to know the people and the processes of the company. This is another myth, interviewing is hard. Interviewing is actually more about preparation, attitude, and mindset, I think, okay? And in particular, I think that you can sort of rejig your mindset by telling yourself or reframing the problem at hand, okay? So you have the idea that interviewing is a chore. No, you should reframe and think about how interviewing could be fun, right? How interviewing could be an opportunity for you to improve your problem-solving skills. You can tell yourself that you're bad at interviews, or you could tell yourself that interviewing is a skill that you could develop by going to interviews. For this reason, you should never ever line up your ideal dream job as your first interview. Okay, you should always line up the jobs that you don't give a crap about because you can afford to bomb at those and use those as practice. Okay. Instead of telling yourself that you're getting rejected because you're a bad candidate, you can tell yourself that it is common that rejection is part of the process. Okay. To this day, I still get rejected when I apply for jobs. That being said, I no longer really apply for that many jobs because I'm tired. Believe me, I'm tired. Finally, you can tell yourself that interviewing shows you your weaknesses, or you can say that interviewing is a chance for you to practice and build on your strengths, okay? So I'm hoping that you can develop a very positive mindset towards interviewing, because after some time, a lot of software engineers actually treasure the opportunity to interview at companies, okay? Because it's not that often where you have so little on the line, okay? Interviewing is when you're at a job, actually, then that's when the pedal will hit the metal, I think. and then you actually have stuff to lose. Okay, you're already on the job. Now, it's been a very curious few months. I would say a very curious 19 or so months, because 15 or so months, 17 or so months. Okay, we've been in a pandemic. And lots of companies have transitioned to conducting their interviews over Zoom. Okay, the number one thing to note is that, and I've gone around, talking to people who interview and talking to people who have been interviewed, and I've collected some tips for how to succeed at pandemic level interviewing. Okay, so number one is make sure your equipment works. Okay, so please don't go into the Zoom meeting and just be like, can you repeat yourself? I can't hear you. What did you say? Okay. And please make sure that you set up your screen share beforehand as well. So often you'll be asked to share your screen. So what I personally like to do is I personally like to have, a piece of code editor open. Okay, and also maybe I open up like my notes app. Okay, and I can actually also like maybe start creating a new note, and so just in case I need to take notes, I can. So let me show you what I do. Left half. That's my notes app. Oh, I know why. Notes app.
I think we can only see a white line.
Oh, sorry. Let me just
didn't set up your screen share.
Where is my desktop one? Here. Okay. Can you see my screen right now? Like it's over here. So This is what I do. And I also have installed this thing called Rectangle, and this Rectangle app just basically snaps stuff to the left or the right.
Our students have that.
You may find that that is useful when you are actually interviewing. Some other, and this is something that I think that Porter did very well, which is to type the notes in detail, okay? And basically the idea is to translate the interview question to point form and to validate the notes with the interviewer's point of view before you actually start in the question. And I think that that's really what Porter did a very good job with. Okay? Not always will you need to draw primitive diagrams, but honestly, this is the portion that I think that is the hardest, I think, for people to do, because it's quite hard to let's say answer questions about graphs or trees, because often when you answer a question about graphs or trees, you have a blackboard behind you in real life to draw on it, but right now over Zoom it's a little bit harder. So some people have resorted to learning how to draw primitive diagrams in the text editor with, equal sign and greater than, less than for arrows and stuff like that. Now, this of course will have differing levels of success. I've only seen one person actually successfully make this work. Another thing that I think that Porter did well at first, but grew increasingly weaker at, I think, because as the interview drew on, he got a little bit tired as well, is to think aloud so that you give the interviewer breadcrumbs to help you along the way. Especially because we're doing things over Zoom, you have to ensure that things don't get lost in translation. So if in doubt, repeat and make sure you talk as you type. And even if you feel like you're being very clear, sometimes it's good to just hum to yourself, okay? This is because over Zoom, sometimes if there's absolute silence, it causes anxiety to the person on the other end, because we can't tell if the audio has stopped working or not, okay? So if you just go, you're typing and you go, yeah, there's one. Okay, like it can add some level of reassurance to everyone that things are proceeding as normal. Okay. And the final thing is, don't be shy to ask. Okay, like it's over Zoom. So if you didn't hear something, just ask. If you got lost, ask. Okay. If you missed any context, ask. If you're in doubt, ask. Okay, because it's Zoom, I think people have a bit of a longer leash in being forthcoming with advice. Okay, so I think that's my general kind of tips for the day. Now, let's go back to the question, right, that Porter was addressing, okay? So I think that the idea here is perhaps that the two lists are sorted, okay? So perhaps let me just share my screen, my actual share. Let me share this screen, okay? Okay, combine lists, list A, list B. So that the idea here is that these lists are already sorted. So let's say we have list J, 1, 2, 5, 7, 9, 10. So and we have another list, and maybe this list has 4, 6, 8, 10, 15. The idea here is that at any given point in time, we need only consider, okay, this, okay, what I call the head of the list, okay? Please note that in this case, the head of the list, of course, will change depending on where you are, because once we've consumed this element, we do not need it anymore. We've put it into our new list, okay? The issue, of course, is if you pop from the left of a list, is that a cheap or expensive operation?
It's going to be pretty expensive.
Yes. Okay, because remember, lists are cheap at the end and expensive at the front. Okay, so we pop from the left of a list, you actually must go all the way to the start of the list, okay, from the back. And then it comes here, and then you say bye-bye. Okay, so that's why whenever you're doing something at the front of the list, you must always be quite careful. So that's why I encouraged Porter to consider the idea of perhaps using an index, and indeed separate indices for both lists, in the sense that once we've advanced this index here, okay, we no longer need to consider it. We no longer need to consider the index before, okay? So in this sense, you can mimic the idea of popping from the left of a list without actually having to modify a list, okay? So practically speaking, whenever you're asked to deal with lists, please always be very careful that you're able to manipulate lists without touching the underlying list, if that makes any sense, okay? So in other words, are you able to iterate over lists? Now, in most languages, actually, this is quite hard because I could see Porter really struggling because she asked me midway through, will the lists be the same length? And in this case, right, the lists are not necessarily the same length. And that can cause a lot of anxiety to people, I think, because whenever you iterate, you might encounter the edge condition of, okay, am I past the end of the list? Some languages, this is a little easier than others because some languages, for example, Python, right? they allow you to create iterators over the lists, in which case you don't actually have to care about um, which list ends first, okay? So for example, if I were doing this in Python, I would say, I would convert this to iter a equals to list a, and iter b equals to iter list b. Then I can just be while true. Okay. And then I can consume from both lists without actually having to care about the when each list ends explicitly. Now, if you had to care about when each list ends, then you would check, okay? So basically you would check for I and j being less than the minimum of either list, okay? So you iterate until you hit the end of the list, okay? So that's the that's perhaps maybe that can add another hit to Porter's concerns. Okay, is that clear? Kind of where my mind's at with respect to this. The other issue, okay, is that if you are calling the default sort operator in most languages, what is the runtime of that? Perhaps, and this is just an open question to anyone in this class. Let's say the list is of length n.
We've covered this before in the sorting module, guys.
I mean, the fastest sort we know is log n.
We use a merge sort.
Yes,
Correct.
which is log n, yeah.
Incorrect.
And log n?
Correct.
Right.
So default sorting algorithms on average will perform n log n. And I do not know what the default merge in Python is tim sort, which is n log n. And I don't know what it is in JavaScript, but I am willing to bet a lot of money that is also on average n log n. But it is interesting that, Samantha, you brought up merge sort. Can you tell me why I say this is interesting?
Well,
Can you? So let me be more specific. How does this question pertain to merge sort?
So merge sort is kind of like this: you divide and conquer. Like you divide the input into like by half, and if you have the midpoint, you can compare like whether what is if whatever your sorting is to the left is like less than. Am I explaining properly?
Okay, I think to be clear, merge sort consists of two steps, right? There's the merge there's the split step and then there's the merge step, right? So basically you're going to recursively split your list into two portions. Now, the funny thing about this question and why I think I ask it is because actually this function can also be called merge, because this function is indeed the merge portion of merge sort. Because in the merge portion of merge sort, what you're doing is you're merging two lists that are already sorted. Okay, so indeed, this is the merge portion of merge sort. Okay, and I think that it is worth relooking at this because, and indeed, okay, so for example, you probably learned another sorting algorithm as well, which is quicksort, right? So for example, quicksort has a pivot, has a split and as a pivot. Okay, so can you write the pivot function? So I think the other encouragement that I can give to you is details really do matter. It's worth to always be on your toes to look at how algorithms work, because when you are in the final interview process, I think people really do want to know whether you have that level of engagement with some of the details in coding that perhaps could lead the interview to have a bit more confidence that you have that kind of like that software engineering mindset. Couple last things that I want to know about about Porter's code, and perhaps this I don't know whether it is the performance under pressure, but there was some things about the JavaScript that led me to feel a little bit uneasy. And perhaps Porter, I think as if you will take feedback and perhaps please don't feel offended that it's coming in this big zone, but I'm trying to desensitize everyone from receiving feedback in this format, right? Which is that, for example, I'm not sure which your use of semicolons was inconsistent. So I'm not sure whether you were trying to go for an ES6 feel or an ES5 feel, or I mean, and of course, like this is nitpicky, right? But these are some of the things that people are definitely going to look for. I did feel that the idea of const and let, I didn't feel necessarily a super, that you were very confident about whether you wanted to modify or touch this later as well. So I think from a detail-oriented perspective, if you do decide to pick a language, and remember, you were the one who said, oh, I want to use JavaScript. So I think from that perspective, if you are the one picking it, you are going to prime the interviewer to look at certain aspects of your language ability, okay? And I am most seasoned, of course, in writing Python. So whenever I see people write Python code, I'm not just looking for the ability to produce code correctly, but the ability to produce code effortlessly with grace. Okay, so I'm hoping that all of you will want to aspire to that level of.
I think part of the issue with Porter might have been that because we usually use ESLint when we're coding in JavaScript. And so Porter is used to the thing auto filling the semicolons and auto doing the indentation. So if we do end up coding in JavaScript for the interviews, you just want to make sure that you code like your ESLint, like you're the machine.
Okay.
Basically.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, people are not going to be unreasonable, of course, but at the same time, I think people want to know that you have a certain level of comfort, which you did, which I think in general you did.
Okay. Do you think you could show us a solution for the problem so Porter can see what you are talking about with the I's and J's?
Yes, let me pull up my solution.
Well, could we code it?
Oh, okay, sure.
Maybe that'd be easier, then because like seeing a code solution is different from seeing someone actually write it. Yeah.
Okay. So IDX A equals to 0.
Oh, I think you share the screen.
Oh. Let me see.
Sorry guys, I know we have a few Q&As afterward. We may have to send the questions to Jireh afterward, but I think when time's up at 1 o'clock, if you need to head out, feel free to head out. I know that, for the next batch, you guys is probably starting at 1:30, so we may stick around for a few minutes for questions afterward. Sorry for running a bit over. Okay. What's going on, Jireh?
So basically, I am going to iterate over this, okay, using a while loop. And once I hit the end of either one of these lists, I'm going to break out and just say that I'm going to concatenate my results, okay? So let me just be clear. I'm going to create a new result, okay, which is an empty list, okay? I'm going to always consume from the front of the list. So in this case, I consume this first, okay? I'm going to take this element and then I'm going to move this list, this pointer forward. Okay. And the idea here is that you don't want to, these lists are already sorted. So all we need to do is take from this element in the list. Okay. Now, so I'm going to declare an empty result, okay, first, and then I'm going to keep on appending into this result as long as I haven't hit the end of these two lists. Okay? So while okay, actually I'm yes. Okay. So I only need to check that this is less than this length and this is less than this length, okay? Because I'm worried about, let's say, getting an index error if I advance this pointer beyond the length of this list, okay? Then what I'm going to do is if, okay, list A, IDX A, okay, is less than list B, IDX B, okay? What I'm going to do is that means this one, okay, is less than this one. So my result must append this one. Okay. Then I advance this pointer right here, IDX. Okay. Else, okay, and let me just, for convenience sake, less than or equal to, because it doesn't really matter whether it's less, because the equality condition can also hold in this case, okay? Else the other case is true, okay, then I will append from this one. Oh, okay. So to append and IDX B plus equals to 1, okay? Then I do result plus okay, so then I'll just take from the, okay, I don't care. Now we're either at the end of IDXA or we're at the end of IDXB, okay? We're at the end of these, either one of these conditions is true, okay? Either we are at the end of this list or we are at the end of this list, okay? Because we must hit the end of one of the lists first, correct? But luckily for us, Python has this operator, which means I don't, okay, take from the rest of this list starting from this. Okay? So either this is the empty list, okay, either this is the empty list, and this has more elements, or without loss of generality, you can swap these around. Okay? But I know that this is sorted, okay, and everything that's here is sorted because this is an assumption that I made before, right? Or this is sorted, and this is sorted, and this is empty. Okay? So I know that my result is definitely going to be sorted. Okay. Any questions?
Yeah.
So in this case, I am grateful that Python has this kind of operator for me to use. Then I don't actually have to worry about which of the lists is empty, which of this continues to have more elements. Okay. I'm actually not so sure how this is elegantly done in JavaScript. Any ideas, Kaiyuan?
JavaScript, you probably do an index, right? From the index A until length of the list. You probably have to specify the end index somehow, some kind of list, what do you call it? Subarray.
I could also have done, I suppose, this length be.
Generally, I recommend doing these problems in Python because the syntax is more straightforward. You have these syntactical shortcuts like what Jireh has been showing us.
Yes.
Yeah, which is why we also practice our DSNA in Python.
Yeah. Okay. So this is one of the ways that you could.
Porter, does the algorithm make sense using the independent indexes? So we don't have to do a for loop and go through the whole like the entire of any of the lists, right? We can have two separate indexes and go step by step through each list without having to go all the way through any one of the lists at any given time.
Yeah, very that.
Cool. Yeah, this is a pattern. I think we may not have seen this before, so it's okay. But we just take this as a tool in our new tool in our toolkit. And so we encounter problems with multiple arrays in the future, we can do something like this with the independent indexes to get things to work.
Okay.
Yeah, this is
Awesome.
cool. Thank you. Nice.
And if you all have to leave, sure, but I'm happy to answer questions if you have any.
Yes, we do have a Q&A. So Jireh, I posted it in the Zoom chat, so you can also open that. Good news from Porter is that this Q&A app is actually built by Porter, and he just demoed it this morning, and we decided to use it for the Q&A. And students have already posted all of their questions in this thing.
Lucky us. Where do I go? Sorry.
So it's in the Zoom chat. I think you're only sharing the VS Code window. You're not sharing your whole screen. But the Q&A link is in the Zoom chat. This is an app that Porter built. He demonstrated it to us this morning, and it's a pigeonhole clone. So it's like a Q&A aggregation app.
Got it. But I do not know in which.
Do you see the Q&A? Are you able to open it up?
No, I don't know what
in the Zoom chat. Oh, you can't find the Zoom chat? I can also send it in Slack if that helps.
Yeah, oh, in Zoom chat. Okay, I was looking at Slack chat. Oh,
yeah. It's in the Zoom chat.
Thank you.
Okay, so I'm gonna just moderate a little bit. We're gonna spend maybe another 9 minutes. We'll end at 1:15 if that's okay. But if anyone needs to head out, grab lunch or anything before your next class, feel free to head out in the meantime. And thanks, Jireh, for staying a bit longer as well to answer a question. Cool. Okay, top voted question from Porter. And please upvote questions, guys, if you prefer any. Could you share more about your time at Facebook? How was the transition from data scientist to software engineer?
Let's actually start with the more interview-based questions, because that's I think why. And if it looks like this question now actually has received more votes, which is what kinds of algorithm questions would you expect entry-level engineers to receive?
Yes.
So there is a textbook called CLRS, and we do it for CS161 at Stanford. And in general, that's too advanced. So I would say everything that comes right before the more advanced graph questions. Okay, so you should expect to I think the most complicated ones I've seen are basic graph questions. So basically, if you are given a graph, you might be expected to breadth first search through it or depth first search through it. Have you all heard of these algorithms, by the way? BFS and DFS? They are
I think the advanced students have. The students who are further in the course have. The earlier students haven't gone through that yet.
I mean, they're beautiful algorithms in some sense because they can be written so crisply in some languages. I think that's where I think I usually stop when it comes to, but everything before that is fair game, right? So you think about—
What do you mean before? What's considered before?
Okay, your lists, your sets, your hash tables, also known as dictionaries. Okay, so everything there, that's what I would say would be likely to be important in the sense that if I ask you, okay, let's have what is the average sort time for a list? That should kind of be second nature. If I ask you, if you pop from the front of a list and you do this uncritically, then I think that's where I, as an interviewer, might be a little bit anxious. So lists and all of the associated index-based kind of list algorithms, hash tables, so anything to do with hash table. How do you look up from a hash table with constant time? Yeah, and not just that, right? But you also have to be able to manipulate lists and hash tables / dictionaries in kind of and use those to share your to solve your problems, if that makes any sense. Okay, so understanding when you can use a list and when you can use a hash table.
Awesome.
I think also you should definitely be prepared to think about other data structures like decks and heaps. So decks implement a first in, first out. So when you pop from the left of a deck, right, it's also constant time. So
Like a queue, right?
Yeah, it's a queue. Yeah, sorry, I don't know why I called it.
Python thing is called
Python
deck.
is called a deck.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's also called a queue. But also sometimes heaps can be useful to maintain some minimum property. So just think about when those might be. You know, like the follow-up question that I asked to merge two sorted lists is merge n sorted lists. Okay, let's say I give you 5 sorted lists. Can you merge them? The insight there is to use a heap. Okay, so you have to use a heap. But of course, the pedal comes to the metal when you have to think about how you can maintain the heap and also the list. Okay, because you want to put the element from the list into the heap, but the heap itself may not know which list it's pointing to. Okay, so that's kind of a follow-up question that so this is the this has the most.
I don't have the admin. I don't have the admin thing, so I can't mark things as answered.
Oh yeah, don't worry.
But we're just gonna go through the next question. How should entry-level engineers best prepare for interviews? So you mentioned it's not about being a genius; it's about preparation. What's the best way?
There are great resources out there nowadays, and I think that the best way is to sign up for one of those free coding resources. So the most common one, what is it called again?
LeetCode.
LeetCode, yeah. And the issue with LeetCode is that I think that the solutions tend to be very community driven, if I'm not wrong, right? So sometimes the solutions are all over the place. So you have to also be a very conscious consumer, right? Like LeetCode is like Stack Overflow. When you read the solution, you have to be like, whoa, like, is this right or is this not right? Okay. It is definitely okay to, so back to that. Okay. And then I think that you should probably also enlist a partner who is about at the same or slightly more advanced than you to talk about your solutions, because I think even just now when I was coding my own solution, I just felt really like, oh, I have to do this again. I'm the interviewer. Like, I hate shit, you know, like, and when you get into the mode of interview, you have to switch of being interviewed. Sorry, you have to switch your mindsets, right? Like, you have to switch your mindset and you have to. So for me, even for me, it's like switching on a CPU that is stuttering to life, okay? Like, it's like an old Mac computer from 10 years ago, that kind of thing. And then you see the spinning wheel of death. So the other way to do it is to find a partner and to talk aloud about your about why you picked a certain technique / why you picked a certain kind of approach, okay? So find someone and talk to them about it. Don't just solve the question, but talk about solving the question.
Awesome.
It is okay to look up documentation while solving interview questions, but you cannot rely on documentation to solve your interview questions, okay? So of course, if I had said, oh, great, you know how to use JavaScript sort algorithm. Okay, next question. Like in the question just now, like, then that wouldn't be much of an interview. You should not expect to be able to so-called solve the interview based off of just looking up documentation.
Jerry, I think we're gonna wrap up with this last question,
Okay.
the one that you're about to read, I think, and then just because unfortunately we're out of time, but I will share the rest of the questions with you, and hopefully we can get answers, Jerry's answers to these questions in text later on. So the last question is, and I think this is top of mind for students, right? Because we're doing both app building and algorithms prep during our course. How important is algorithms? Is it okay? Effie's question. Would awesome projects and the ability to run through the code with the employer be enough to get the job? How important are algorithms to getting the job?
It depends on the employer. And I would say that it probably depends on the size of the employer. Okay. The smaller the employer is, okay, I think the more flexible in general they have kind of they have a more flexible approach to hiring you. Okay. So, but the larger the employer is, you probably don't have that big a chance. So what like, if you wanna get hired at Grab, sorry, you just have to get hired through the route that everyone else gets hired by, and this route is you have to answer questions like what we just did. So this may not be applicable to everyone because it may not be everyone's dream to work at Grab. It is certainly not mine.
I won't tell them. I won't tell them.
Kaula.
Yeah.
I'm just kidding. Okay. So, but just bear in mind that the smaller the employer is, the more willing they are to sit down with you and talk to you about, your project. But the larger they are, they don't have time. You are just a statistic to them, to a recruiter. Okay. So
awesome. I think we'll close out here. Unfortunately, we're out of time. Jireh, would you have any general advice for our students who are breaking into the industry for the first time?
It's not easy. It's very hard, and you may not get the optimal choices that you want for your first job. I certainly didn't. But if you kind of work mindfully at it, you kind of level up. It's, like slowly the Squirtle becomes a war turtle and eventually a Blastoise.
I think we will leave it at that. That was a great ending.
Wow, nice. Now I know which Pokemon you picked out of the three.
No, actually,
Nice.
I picked Bulbasaur. But
Nice.
for some reason, I was just thinking a blue color, and then anyway, thank you.
Thanks so much, Jireh, for being with us.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Jireh.
Thank you. Thanks for the mock interview. Thanks for the advice.